Hi, again, this is Lee Solden. Continuation of today's lecture, which is about teaching Dutch, okay, using my particular method of natural language acquisition, which I call accelerated immersion. This is live at World Languages Facebook page. And again, I'm Lee Solden. I am learning and I teach what I know: Greek, Italian, Dutch, French, Spanish, German, Russian, Korean, Hindi, Mandarin, mainstream Arabic, and Brazilian Portuguese. I'm trying to use this lecture series starting today and every day at the same time, 5 o'clock US Eastern Time, to teach Dutch. And for today and the next 2 days, I'll be doing the same exact thing, trying to get people to start my program, which is to, uh, well, the first thing you got to do is start listening to a lot of Dutch. Now, my video usually goes about a half hour and then it cuts out on me and I got to restart it. So, probably a daily occurrence. There'll always be two of these instead of just one. And while I was stopped rolling film here, I stopped to put the link attached to a comment of the first film, the first part of this. That is a link to someone speaking 7 minutes of Dutch. His name is Slash Depover. He's from West Flanders, a region called West Flanders in Belgium. So he's going to speak Dutch with a bit of an accent, and I think it's perfectly okay. If you learn Dutch by his accent, you're probably going to be able to follow anybody else's Dutch pretty well. Okay, and if not, hey, uh, you can always get a hold of me on Facebook Messenger, Lee Solden, and I can have you do some ear tuning to Dutch right from the Netherlands if you want to go that way. At that point, it would be just a matter of hours going from one accent to the other. I don't think it. I mean, personally, I'm learning standard Dutch. I listen to a lot of that, but I'm also learning how to follow this guy speaking his uh, uh, West Flanders accent. I'm even learning to some extent how to understand um, uh, Afrikaans. It's a type of Dutch spoken in South Africa. I'm even learning directly, to some extent, some of West Flanders. Not, I mean, it's Dutch, but it's quite a bit different. Okay, so this guy's speaking on this 7 minute audio is Dutch. He's speaking in Dutch. He's not trying to speak in his own native uh, he's not speaking West Flanders. He's speaking Dutch, but it has a West Flanders accent to it. Okay, the way he says some of the vowels exactly, etc. But he is speaking Dutch, and so I'm trying to get people to start listening to him by looping that 7 minutes. At the same time, listen to as much Dutch as you can. Listen to Dutch music if you want. There's lots of fairy tales I know that I listen to all the time on YouTube, called Lecturama, Lekturama, Lecturama. Um, let me see here. So back to my story of how I created this system. Okay, I left off March 10th, 2019. I just tuned my ear in to Korean, which meant that now my ear was tuned in to all 12 languages that I was interested in. Okay. And I thought I was all set. But 2 days later, on March 12th, 2019, a language partner friend of mine sent me a audiobook. It was the Alcoholics Anonymous program, full speed audiobook with text in Spanish. And I looked at it. Yeah, I don't want to open this up. Why would I want to open that up? I'm working with everything common phrase videos. I had been listening to stuff in full speed in all these languages for a few years now on Netflix. It never really got me anywhere. So I was thinking, what good is that? I was getting somewhere with learning a whole lot of common phrase um, videos. I'd learned 400 phrases of Hindi, for instance, 130 phrases of Mandarin, although I couldn't pick up the tones at that time. But I thought I was doing pretty good. But yet a friend had sent it, so I opened that audiobook up. It's about a 1 hour long audiobook. And I started listening to it, and it's in full speed Spanish, and I really couldn't pick it up. At this point, I could never pick up anything on an audiobook in a foreign language. I could pick up English, and that's it. Okay. So maybe a foreign language to you, but I could not understand any foreign language on TV or in an audiobook on March 12th, 2019. Okay. So I decided that I would treat it just like I'd treated those common phrase videos for Korean, Russian, and Arabic. That's all I've been doing from March 1 to March 10 is tuning into all these languages. So March 12th, the guy sends me an audiobook. I opened it up and I make that decision that despite not being that interested in the whole thing, I had studied Spanish directly for a year. March 15th of 2018, I switched to French. Okay. So about a year earlier, I stopped studying Spanish, and I certainly wasn't using any full speed anything. It's all about common phrases. Okay. But out of habit, I started listening to it. And I started realizing that I couldn't hear it very well. But part of the problem was so there's some words I didn't know in there. So I spent some time looking, there's like 10 words I just didn't know in the half hour that I chose, like right in the middle of it. Chose a half hour right in the middle of the audiobook. And another 20 I looked up to make sure I knew what they meant. So then I had a half hour of Spanish that I could listen to and read. And when I read it, I understood it, okay, because I knew all the words. And I've been reading Spanish for quite a few years at this point. So looking up a few words and I can read it. Okay, so I'm sitting there reading it and treating it just like I treated the common phrases. I read a whole half hour of it. Then I closed my eyes and listened to it. Just listened to a half hour of Spanish being spoken, trying to catch what he was saying. I couldn't do it that well. I'd read it again, and then with while listening. Again, I'd close my eyes, just listen. I did that for hours a day for 2 days. At the same time, if I wasn't doing that, I was just passively listening to Spanish. So something like 7 to 9 hours between the what I call read throughs and the passive listening. At the end of the second day, as I was turning the computer off, last couple of sentences in Spanish sounded quite clear to me. I put it down to, I must have been really familiar with those two sentences or something. Who knows? I mean, I wasn't expecting anything out of this. I was just thinking maybe I could hear it. If it works for common phrases, maybe it'll work a little bit for full speed. I wasn't holding out much hope, mind you. Well, the next morning, I turned the same audiobook back on. I'm going to do this for day 3. But hey, didn't need day 3. Turns out that half hour of Spanish was crystal clear to me. I understood exactly what was being said. But it's not just that half hour. The whole hour audiobook sounded quite clear, and I couldn't understand every bit of it because there's some vocabulary words I didn't know than the rest of it. But for the half hour that I'd looked up any words I didn't know, I understood and not by reading it, mind you, by just listening, I could understand exactly what was being said. It sounded quite clear to me. And for me, I'm extremely excited. This was like March, this was March 15th. I believe March 12th, that was the day I, was looking up the words and whatnot. By my March 13th and 14th. So, okay, March 15th, I woke up knowing this stuff by ear. And okay, well, again, back to the fact I'm a bit of an experimenter. I'm going like, wow, did this really happen? This is amazing. Okay, I mean, okay. So, and I assumed at that point it's because I could read Spanish so well. Well, the next thing I turned my attention to was German, which I'd read like, I don't know, 4 times more of than I had Spanish. Okay, I could read German pretty good. So I found something in German to read, an audiobook with text, and I started reading that um, for several hours a day, and also, but no, but the experimenter in me said, wait a second, do I really need to do this for several hours a day? I'm just going to do it for like 3 hours a day. Okay. So that now I only spent 3 hours a day on German, either passively listening to it or doing read throughs, which means I was reading the German, then going back and just listening to it. Well, I'm a pretty strong reader for German, so for me, this is the same as reading English. I mean, I knew what things were supposed to sound like. Okay. Um, and sure enough, well, I didn't even wait. Before the German tuned in, I started doing this with French next. Okay. Well, the German tuned in about a day or so after I started also doing this with French. So now I was up to 2 languages that I could actually hear on an audiobook and make it know what was being said. So I went from 0 on March uh, 12th, March 15th, up to 1 by about the March 18th. I'm at 2. Getting pretty excited here. Okay, lifetime learning these languages, and now all of a sudden I can hear them pretty good on an audiobook. I'm just completely floored by all this. Okay. And now I'm trying to tune my ear into French. And it took 4 days for the French. I mean, it took 4 solid days listening to French. And the morning of the fifth day, the French started coming in clear. I need the long, between those 3 languages, it's French. I ended up taking more time to do more ear tuning because I was still not really there yet compared to the Spanish and the German as far as my ear goes. But I put a lot of time into ear tuning for French after this point. Um, and well, okay. Next, I get some more surprises here. I go to do this with Brazilian Portuguese to ear tune to it, and guess what? It's already tuned in because I tuned into Spanish. Okay, and so I went to Italian. Now, I dared not go to Italian. Oh, man, could Italian also have tuned in? Yeah, it did. It wasn't nearly as crystal clear as the Spanish, mind you, because it's a slightly different accent, but it was pretty good. And eventually, I went back to those languages and wrote ear tuning syllables directly for Brazilian Portuguese, directly for Italian, and did ear tuning directly to those languages. But for a long time, I just kept doing more ear tuning exercises for Spanish. Well, anyway, that's up to, I think what, 5, I don't know. So anyway, next thing I do is I go listen to some Dutch. Sure enough, because I tuned in to German, the Dutch sounded pretty clear to me. Again, later on, I had to start ear tuning directly to Dutch to even get it sharper. Okay. But here I am now at 6 languages that I could make out to at least some extent on an audiobook. Okay. In the beginnings of hearing it right on TV, took more ear tuning and more time for that. Um, part of that is just sticking with it. I mean, at first, when you can hear something on an audiobook pretty good, and you go to a TV program, because of the broken dialogue, the background noise issues, it might not happen right away for you. But if you stick with it, I found, then one day you just go to that same program you were struggling to hear one day, and now you can hear it. Okay. So when you're transitioning between the audiobooks and say stuff, movies on Netflix, don't try to force it. Just do some of it. Do some ear tuning to the Netflix stuff, and go back and listen to the stuff again. Look up the words in a program in Spanish, say, and don't expect it to be overnight. Just keep going back to it periodically, and it'll come. If your ear is tuned into a audiobook at full speed, it will tune into the Netflix stuff. It might just take a little longer and a little patience, but I would not put a whole lot of time into it. Okay, just let it come. Okay. Um, okay, ear tuning to 6 languages now. Okay, what now? Still got 6 other languages I'm not tuned into. Hindi, Mandarin, Arabic, a few others, Greek, probably not. Something's not coming to mind. Oh well, so that's like what saying, the other two will pop in there. But anyway, so the 6 languages I'm not ear tuned to. And I thought that the ear tuning had something to do with the fact I could read quite well French, Spanish, and German. Remember, the other three just came in as side benefits to the first three, okay? So I told myself I was going to really, really, really get into Hindi and get a good vocabulary. I was like 800 words of Hindi I knew, and I wanted to. I'll get up to a few thousand words of Hindi and really, really push learning Hindi, and then I'll get ear tuned to it. Okay. But one day later, I had an insight. I'm going like, wait a second. I ear tuned to the half hour of Spanish, but the whole hour came in nice and clear. So I had a theory. What if I just tune in to some Hindi and see how that translates into the rest of the audiobook? So I talked about this with my language partner from India, who is feeling down right now, a little illness. Hope he's doing better today if he happens to be hearing this. Anyway, so I talked to him about this. What he did for me was to write uh, the world's first ear tuning syllables, really. He wrote down with English letters Hindi, which is not uncommon, and people use that all the time. They're talking on the phone, they type in English letters to represent the words in Hindi rather than using Hindi script because it's a little tough to type on a keyboard, especially on a phone keyboard. So anyway, and this guy wasn't directly a Hindi speaker. I mean, he spoke Hindi fine, mind you, but his native language was something similar to Hindi. When he typed Hindi, he didn't type it like the average person. He typed it exactly as it sounds. He typed it phonetically, and I had him dictate 30 seconds of an audiobook for me. At that point, I had not found any audiobooks with text. I just had one that 10 hours long, no text. Anyway, I had him do some dictation for me, and he did several minutes of dictation for me over the months. But I had him do that first 20, 25 seconds of dictation for me in Hindi using English letters, and they're phonetic again, right? And because I've been communicating him for a while in Hindi, a lot of simple stuff, I knew exactly how to read his Hindi letters. I mean, I knew that if I saw an O, that was not O. It was it was like ah, okay. But I knew exactly what something was supposed to sound like if he put an English letter down there for me. Okay, so I have what turns out to be in front of me ear tuning syllables. So I try to follow the voice in Hindi exactly as I'm reading those ear tuning syllables. And that didn't work out very well at first. It took 9 days, but it worked. 9 days later, I had an ear for Hindi. Wasn't perfect, but I had an ear for Hindi. I had something to start with. Now, if someone said a Hindi word to me, even within a context of a full a sentence spoken at full speed, I got a chance of hearing it correctly and repeating what was said. Okay. Now, mind you, I had a long way to go at this point. We'll get back into that on Hindi, but I just proved that ear tuning syllables work. In other words, this is the whole key to how I teach these days. I don't teach you a single word of a language when I start teaching you a language. Like Dutch, I'm teaching you Dutch. I'm 1 hour into this thing, and I think I mentioned that Netherlands is what they call their language, okay? Netherlands style. That's called the Netherlands tongue. Okay, so but I'm not going to teach you any Dutch words right now. I am going to get you into the most important habit of them all that you have to maintain to quickly pick up Dutch is to surround yourself with Dutch. Okay. Now, and the fact that I got my ear tuned into Hindi with a 30-second stretch from an audiobook where I did not know any of the Hindi words in that 30-second stretch. Well, a couple little tiny things like of, but basically I had no idea what was being said in the 30 seconds. But yet, without knowing any of the sentence or the meaning of it, my ear tuned into it. And I realized that the way to teach a language is first and foremost get a person listening to it for a while. Get them in. Part of that is getting them into the habit of listening to it. Second, get them to do ear tuning exercises. That is, put ear tuning syllables in front of them that they can read, and bam, a few days later, I mean, after listening for 21 hours, then doing a few days of ear tuning exercises for most languages, a person's ready to roll. They're ready to actually learn the language because now they hear it correctly. And once you start telling them a story in the language and telling them what it means, they're picking it all up. Okay. So yeah, so I do everything like a child gets taught the language. First, the child's ear tunes into the language. Then they start associating what they're hearing correctly to what's going on as the sentence is being spoken. My students learn Dutch that same way. They're going to hear a lot of Dutch at first, not making any sense out of it. Then they're going to do ear tuning exercises, and bam, a couple of days later, after they start doing ear tuning exercises, they start making sense out of what's being spoken. It sounds like clear words to them. Then I start telling them what the first sentence means in the story and why. Give them the vocabulary from that first sentence, an absolute minimum amount of grammar as needed for that first sentence. And so, okay, they know what that first sentence means. Well, maybe the first sentence is just hi, okay, dash, okay. So look, that's one way to say hi in Dutch, okay. And the next sentence might be a little longer, etc. But so you learn Dutch one sentence at a time, but you don't learn it even. I mean, the day that I tell you what several sentences mean in Dutch, I don't expect you to actually understand them. I'm just going to tell you what they mean, and I expect you to do this. You pretend you're the child, okay, and you're about to hear some Dutch spoken, right? You don't have your mother gesturing or grimacing in front of you. So instead, you're going to look over the definitions in English of what the sentence means just before you listen to it. Okay. So instead of the gestures and whatnot, you get what this sentence that you're about to hear in terms of a known language. Okay. And then you listen to it while you're reading it, and then you close your eyes and just listen to it. Now, first day you do this, you very well might not understand anything the guy's saying when he speaks that Dutch sentence, but I'll have you listen to it a few times while reading it, listen to it a few times with your eyes closed, and move on to the second sentence, and the third, the fourth, the fifth. There is no studying in my program. You do not have to know what that Dutch sentence means at the end of the day, or any of them. I don't care if you know a single Dutch word at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. You were told what was going on. Your speech center was picking it up. Your speech center is a supercomputer picking up things way faster than you. Your subconscious mind works 20 times faster than your conscious mind. Your speech center is part of all that. So your speech center is going to pick up a bunch of this stuff. And on top of that, you're also looping the same audiobook you're trying to learn throughout the day. And so your speech center is hearing it all in context. When you wake up in the morning, your speech center will have taken its input, built paradigms up, and put some Dutch in your permanent memory. So the next day you go do the same thing. You've only been introduced to the words for a few sentences at this point. So you're going to start over. You're going to go to the first sentence. You're going to do the read throughs. You can say, okay, look at your notes, see what it means, listen to it while reading it, and then just listen to it. Well, this time when you just listen to it, you're going to start understanding it. Okay, that's a function of the speech center. And it won't be perfect, but you're going to start understanding it. Day 2, you understand it better. Day 3, you understand it better. Well, by this time you've moved on. Maybe you know all 7 minutes of this audiobook, depending on how much read throughs you're doing. Okay, so now you know the whole 7 minutes of the audiobook. I mean, you've been introduced to it. Doesn't mean you know it. And you maybe you go through this 7 minutes several times like that. You start with the first sentence, you do the read throughs. Over time, I mean, because you're hearing it correctly, and because you keep giving your speech center input about what the sentences mean, you learn them, and you don't just learn them, you learn them by ear. And also, we'll be typing up the text of what this guy is saying for the 7 minutes, and I'll be posting that uh, to my videos, right? So you'll have the text. You can read the text in Dutch, which you can use for read-throughs, of course. You'll also have the ear tuning syllables, okay? Now, again, the ear tuning syllables will be posted uh, anytime I do one of these videos. I'll be posting the ear tuning syllables. But the ear tuning syllables text, no, you don't need that right now. What you need right now is to start listening to Dutch, okay? When you need them, they will be there, okay? So, in sum, my program goes like this. First of all, you surround yourself with Dutch. Number 2, you start doing ear tuning exercises so you start hearing the Dutch well. And you don't stop the ear tuning exercises, nor do you stop the passive listening, because your goal is to have a native ear for Dutch, not just a good ear for Dutch. Okay, so as you're working on your ear end of it, and you're getting good enough to where you can start picking up the words, now I'm starting to introduce you the words, the meaning of the words in Dutch in relationship to a known language. Okay, and I call that process read-throughs. Again, this is Lee Solden. This is a live video uh, from the Facebook page called World Languages. Today is August 5th, 2020. It's 6:14 p.m. right now. Um, the next lecture will be tomorrow, 8/6/20 at 5 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time. The topic is going to be somewhat the same. It's going to be about passive listening, and trying to encourage you to go out there and start passive listening to Dutch. Okay. And if you want to learn some other language besides Dutch, hey, contact me on Facebook Messenger, Lee Solden, LeeSohLden, and tell me what language you want to learn. And I'll be glad to start you out. I'll give you an audiobook in that language to tell you to start listening to it. Okay. And again, I am learning and teach what I know. Uh, Greek, Italian, Dutch, French, Spanish, German, Russian, Korean, Hindi, Mandarin, mainstream Arabic, and Brazilian Portuguese. Okay. Um, that's it for the day. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Please leave me any comments, especially are you going to try to learn Dutch? What's your native language? How well do you speak English? A lot of people want me to teach them in English because they're trying to learn English too, right? So I found it's a practical. Most of the time, I teach people in English. Okay, someone knows no English, and I'm trying to teach them Russian, then I'm going to have to stop and make sure they know every word in English that I'm using to teach them the Russian. Okay, and I will absolutely put you on a learning program, but for English, but I'd like you to start out with, if you want to learn Russian from me or Dutch, start with that. You're going to learn some English as a byproduct of just me constantly talking to you in English and typing you stuff in English, communicating to you in English, giving you definitions in English for the target language you're interested in. And but then, after like a month of that, I'll put you on. I'll have you start listening to an English audiobook that you're gonna then have you tune your ear into that and start doing read throughs for that English audiobook and go that route. So, however, I don't just teach people English who are not learning another language from me. So if I'm teaching you something that I'm learning myself, it's doing me some good. Okay. I love teaching German. Number one, I'll tell you, I love teaching German. Number two, I love teaching Spanish. Third most favorite thing, I love teaching French. Okay. Because I'm always trying to learn them better. So if I'm teaching you, I'm learning them better. If you're not interested if you're not helping me with one of these languages, or learning from me one of these languages that I'm interested in, I'm probably not going to teach you English. Okay. Uh, about the only exception I'd make, if I knew you well enough to know that you wanted to learn my system and learn other languages, and you absolutely wanted to teach this system to other people, hey, I might take the time to teach you English just so you can turn around and learn my system and teach it to other people. Okay. Um, and that's, I guess I'm going to end, I've said everything I have to say, but I will end with this thought. It is my dream that someday anybody who wants to learn any language will have absolutely zero problems learning it because somebody like me will have completely set up a system to where they don't have to do any studying. Okay. All they got to do is start listening to the language. They got to occasionally look at the equivalent between their known language and the target language and just listen to it. So it's all about listening, right? And continue to listen to it passively and they just soak up the language, okay? Now there's a lot of languages and there's a lot of native languages. So hey, there's a whole lot of work out there to set up these things. Right now, I'm not saying I've had help with this, but I'm still the only person that's spending like full-time part of my life is setting up these systems for people to learn languages. I sure would love more and more help, okay? If you're that type of person, hey, contact me. We'll teach you the system, teach you a language, and you can start. Hey, look, like I'm doing a video series right here. I can't, I'm a guest here, right? But maybe somewhere I'm trying to teach Dutch. Maybe you want to teach your own language. Maybe you want to teach Spanish. Okay. And I thought about teaching Spanish. If I find someday, if I find a Spanish speaker working with me, maybe I'll use this channel to teach Spanish someday. Okay. But maybe you can teach Spanish or teach Russian or whatever language you want with this same system to where people are not studying. They're just picking it up, just soaking it up. Okay. And okay, crazy idea department. I always have crazy ideas. I don't know how many people. Maybe nobody out there wants to learn Dutch. I mean, why not learn Dutch? I mean, Dutch is spoken in the Netherlands. It's spoken, different dialects of it are spoken in Belgium. I think most of Belgium, if you walk in some town, you're going to find somebody that understands. I mean, if you can speak Dutch, I think Dutch is kind of the glue that people use to communicate with to some extent. So you're at least you're probably going to be able to communicate if you walking around Belgium, I would guess. But also, South Africa speaks a dialect called Afrikaans of Dutch. Some people say it's a separate language, but I don't know. I've been looking at it quite a lot, and to me, it looks like a dialect. I mean, there's not much I can't understand looking through the Afrikaans, okay? But anyway, so there's more than just a few people that speak Dutch in the world. Furthermore, hey, if you learn Dutch, that is a Germanic language, right? As the English is too, but it's one more. If you learn Dutch, it's a lot closer to German than English is. So if your goal is to eventually learn German, hey, well, you got two routes there. You could learn Dutch and get grounded in Dutch, then go to German, which is pretty close. Of course, you could just contact me on Facebook Messenger. I'll be glad. That's my favorite thing to do is teach people German, by the way. Did I mention that? Okay, probably did. Okay. So, yeah, you can just contact me. I'll teach you German using all the same system. But crazy idea department. What if we got everybody in the world to learn Dutch? Okay. Specifically, this West Flanders accent Dutch that I'm trying to teach here. Uh, hey, if everybody in the world watched this channel, then I could teach pretty much everybody in the world Dutch. Doesn't matter if there's one person out there or 50 people out there or the whole world out there.